7:01 a.m. on Friday, November 15th, exactly 3 weeks ago today, I woke up to this breaking news alert on my phone. And it really hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, viscerally, I suddenly understood for the first time where that saying comes from. So originally, I was going to talk to you today all about the topic of play, about how I've incorporated playfulness into my job within a corporate setting, about how I aspire to make Atlanta a more playful city. But truthfully, I haven't been able to stop thinking about this over the last 3 weeks. And out of that, I realized there's another story, a more important story that I really wanted to tell. And so I'm still going to talk about play, but I'm going to take a very different path to that topic today and begin instead with the story of my family. As to why this hit me so hard and why it matters so much to me, you should know 2 things. 1, my parents met each other in a labor camp, and 2, I was raised in China under the one-child policy. You might be wondering how in the world this even remotely relates to play. And believe me, even I was surprised to discover the connections, but I have come to see that the 2 topics are indeed very much connected. Let me start with the fact that I'm very, very lucky. I actually had a wonderful childhood, very happy childhood growing up in China in the 1980s. My parents traveled with me. We played a lot outside, and in fact, one of my very favorite memories was when both of my parents showed up unannounced at my school, took me out of class, and we played hooky the rest of the afternoon and went to a cherry blossom festival. That's the photo on the bottom left. It's one of my favorite memories. However, there's been one constant in my life. Every single day, regardless of how good or bad of a day it was, without fail, my parents would mention their 10 lost years. And their story, as I know it, is burned into my memory. Starting in about 1968, right as my parents should have been entering college, all of the schools and universities were shut down. As part of a socialist re-education program under the Cultural Revolution, about 17 million urban youth, including my parents, who are both from the city of Shanghai, were sent far away from their homes for an indefinite amount of time. They were sent to the countryside, to the mountains, to become laborers in various communes or state and military-run farms, or to Inner Mongolia, where conditions were often very harsh. My parents found themselves far away from Shanghai as workers on a tea farm, and that's where they actually met each other. For many of these people, 4 words encapsulated their experience. We were the oxen. And those 17 million kids, because their lives were so thoroughly disrupted, became what is known collectively as China's lost generation. When my parents were forced to leave their homes, they were about 18 or 19 years old. By the time they returned home, they were nearly 30 years old. They had to wait a long time to get married. The kids in those camps, they were allowed to go home and visit their families only once a year, and that was a journey that took days and days to make. But if they had gotten married, they would have become each other's family, and that would have meant they couldn't go home to visit their real families in Shanghai. In some ways, it's a story that I know so well because I heard it every single day of my life. But in other ways, I don't know it at all because there's so much that they do not talk about. So about a decade later, that particular program ended. They were finally able to return home, get married, and resume their educations. By the time I was born in 1980, the government had already instituted the one-child policy. So as a result, I grew up there as a part of an entire generation of only children. Growing up, though, my parents always made sure I knew that it was okay that I was a girl. And again, I was very, very lucky there. In about 1990, when I was 10 years old, we had the opportunity to come to the US, and we took that opportunity, and in some ways, we've never looked back. It's been about 23 years since then, and as you can imagine, we've had to invent and reinvent ourselves to fit into American society and to bridge that gap between what was and what is. One of the first things I did was to invent my own name. I realized very early on that I actually hate being the center of attention, and having a Chinese name that very few people could correctly pronounce just meant surefire embarrassment at the beginning of every class at school. And so I chose Karyn simply because I thought it was a pretty name, and I put the Y in it for the Y in my Chinese name. When I got my citizenship, I wrote that down on a piece of paper, and it became official. And that's the story of how I got my name. I'm pretty happy that it worked out well. As a preteen tasked with choosing a name that would stick with me the rest of my life, pretty sure it could have gone worse. So there's an interesting parallel here. My parents lost 10 years of their lives. Because I came to the US when I was 10 years old, for a long, long time, I felt like I was 10 years behind everybody else my age. I haven't really publicly admitted that to many people until today. China increasingly seems like a dream of a past life, and there are so many American references to 80s pop culture that I will forever be clueless about, as my friends to their endless entertainment. In some ways, it's like that new name spawned a whole new person, and certainly a whole new perspective. So I think in these ways, for different reasons, my entire family went through our American lives feeling like we were about a decade behind. All right, well, I want to talk about play. Play is very important to me because in many ways, I've invented myself very much through play. So that photo on the left is taken in China. I'm about 6 years old there, and as all good Chinese kids do, I play a musical instrument. And on the right there was about 3 years ago when I was attending a conference in Savannah called Geekend. Well, not only was I attending Geekend, I was performing at Geekend, so that should tell you a little something about me right there. I'm playing an electric violin, and what the photo does not show you is that there are several other guys performing with me. They are all clad in long white lab coats, and each of them is wielding a hacked Nintendo Wii remote. And they're waving those hacked Wiimotes around, using them to modulate and distort everything I'm playing in real time. They're making me sound symphonic and discordant at the same time. It was awesome. And I love playing in the space because it lets me take something very traditional and completely transform it. And there's something really magical about that. When my husband and I got engaged, we decided we didn't want to do traditional engagement photos. Instead, we wanted to make something that was really playful, that really reflects who we are and what we love. And so this is part of a series that involved a lot of cardboard, spray paint, pillow stuffing, AstroTurf, among other stuff. And in case you're curious, we were lying down on the floor, and the photographer was shooting down at us from a second floor loft to create this illusion of flying. So hopefully some kindred spirits out there recognize that we're big fans of Doctor Who. Woo. We also love to ride our bikes. And we met through our shared love for music. And now we have this awesome 8-month-old baby at home who is really infusing play into our lives in a brand new and nonstop kind of way. Play also carries over into my professional life. So I work right down the street at Turner Broadcasting, where I'm very lucky to have just a dream job. I get to look around the world and look to other fields and bring back anything that's new and innovative and use that information to help spur innovation across all of our brands. So late last year, I started to see a really wonderful trend pop up. It was sort of a resurgence or really a global movement around play. We started to see things like slides and swings pop up in unexpected spaces like bus shelters or train stations or an entire road made out of trampoline. And what I saw, interestingly, did not involve smartphones or checking in or badges. It was all about adults wanting to play in a kid-like kind of way. It was like we wanted to be snapped out of our everyday routines, and we were yearning to experience a moment of unexpected levity. So it's my job to bring stuff like this to Turner, and I love it because it's a blank slate every time. So in order to bring play to Turner, we decided to do it in kind of a guerrilla way to show that play can really emerge wherever you are. So over a weekend, we snuck in armed with neon green duct tape, and we popped up all of these very playful installations that were simple but very inviting. So these two were at our CNN Center downtown. These were at our Techwood campus in Midtown. So employees loved having these at work. I had colleagues and friends who would call me up regularly and say, "Karyn, I just saw a guy in a suit hopscotch into work." And that made my day every single time. Doing it this way led to some fantastic conversations with our HR team about how to more prominently integrate play into our work culture. So we got together, we had some brainstorms and formed some great collaborations, and ultimately that led to something pretty magical. It led to this. This is a staircase inside the CNN Center that we turned into a piano staircase for 8 weeks. Not only is it wrapped to look like a piano, it was outfitted with sensors and speakers so that as people walked up and down, it played like a piano as well. So there are quite a few lessons I learned from essentially becoming an ambassador for play at Turner. One of those lessons is to ask for forgiveness rather than permission. When you want something wonderful to happen, you just have to go out there and do it. The other is that for adults, in order to play, we need to feel safe, and we need to feel like we have permission. And that's what all of these were. They were invitations within a very safe space to play, to, again, snap out of your everyday and have that moment of levity. And it's so important, especially for adults to play, because we've forgotten how. There's all this research out there that says what we already know. More playful people are more creative, they are more productive, they are better problem solvers, and really just happier employees all around, right? So after all of that, I am on a mission to make Atlanta a more playful city, and I want us to do that by seeing the whole city as our playground. So this is a project that I am working to bring to Atlanta in 2014. It's a wonderful art installation called the Red Ball Project, where the artist pops up this giant red ball over the course of 10 days in 10 surprise locations all over the city. And it's really a fantastic invitation to play, right? All right, so now I've come full circle, and I'm struck again by how very lucky I am. How does this all connect? Well, as an immigrant, I don't think it's a coincidence that I love to play. The first step toward a better future is gaining the ability to imagine that future. And above all, play gives you that vision. Play lets you see the possibilities. My parents lost 10 years of their lives in that camp. They lost 10 years of play, but they made up for that time with me. And they made up that time for themselves, and maybe they were also making it up to me that I had to be an only child. But all of those factors contributed to making me exactly who I am today and how I see the world. And so today, even though I can still only do math in my head in Chinese, I can tell you that I no longer feel like I'm 10 years behind. There are other things that I know, that my son will not be an only child, that our children will grow up in a house full of play and laughter and new traditions, that I will never take freedom and choice for granted, and that above all, having the perspective of knowing what my parents went through, what they overcame, and the truly extraordinary journey that they took to get here, I know that I can do anything. So this was an important story for me to tell, and I thank you for listening. Now I will just charge you all with this. Let's not take a single moment or choice for granted. How will you give yourself permission to play? And where might that lead you? Thank you.